You're listening to Crashes, Claims, and Clarity, hosted by Daryl Burrow, a Georgia-based personal injury attorney with over 30 years of experience and founder of Burrow & Associates. With a background in both legal strategy and compassionate client care, Daryl has helped over 10,000 individuals and families navigate life after injury. Guided by his Christian faith and a deep sense of justice, he brings expert insight, personal stories, and powerful interviews to every episode. If you're looking for truth, support, and clarity in the aftermath of an accident, this is your place. This is Crashes, Claims, and Clarity.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You are at another episode of Crashes, Claims, and Clarity. I am your host, Daryl Burrow. I'm an attorney here in the state of Georgia. Our main office is in Duluth, Georgia, but we can practice and serve all counties in the state of Georgia. I am super excited today to be joined by Chris Pugliese. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining me. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us today.
I'm honored to be here.
Folks, I have only known Chris for just a couple of weeks, but we're going to get into his story on what a big impact he is making in his community and making changes in this world. Well, Chris, again, it's a pleasure, and I have spent just a little bit of time with you, but it's been a real honor getting to know you. And first, thank you for all that you do, and again, thank you for being here. Tell me first, tell me about your upbringing.
So I know it sounds like I'm a Georgia boy, but I grew up in Southern California and in the San Fernando Valley, and middle class home, a broken home. My parents divorced at a young age. We didn't go to church. I was pretty unfamiliar with the things of God. It's a very liberal area, and the sort of victim mentality that is being pervasive now was sort of indoctrinated to me at a young age. My mother, I'm an only child, so no brothers and no sisters. So my parents thought, you got it done right the first time, no need to try anymore. But that was not true at all. I was a normal child, but I was a little tough to handle for my mother, and I went to go live with my father at 14 years old. And he was a small business owner, but had some obstacles in his life that he had to overcome, and really he put his life on hold to take me, to get custody of me and be there. He was always around, but it was different when I came to live with him. And I was involved in sports. I was a normal teenage boy, but I was drugs and alcohol were very pervasive, and they're just prevalent and around where I was, and I had partaken at a very young age. And by the time I was 14 or say 15 years old, I was probably using just about every day. And it wasn't long before sports, while they were very important to me or a big part of my life, my education was unimportant to me. I would go to school to socialize, or I would go to school to, just hang out. But the only reason really to go to school was so I could play ball. And I wasn't a great athlete, but, that's what I wanted to do, play baseball and play basketball. It wasn't long before sports took a back seat. And, I thought there was a lot of things I would never do that I ended up doing. And by the time I was 18, and me and my dad were somewhat estranged. I run away when I was 15, I think, maybe 16, come back maybe 10 months later. Just because I couldn't be told anything, I was sort of left to myself, and I thought, my dad thought as long as I was playing sports, everything must be okay. And he was trying to get his business off the ground and trying to put food on the table, and he was off and gone. And so, I was left to myself, and I would I ended up partying, quote unquote, every day, just about. And by the time I was 18, I had no ambition, no dreams. And I started using and started selling drugs. And it wasn't long before I was in trouble. I think I had 12 felony arrests by the time I was 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I was, just in and out of jail, in constant trouble until I was 19 years old. I got my first major strike or felony, and I tried to straighten up after that. I made a promise to God that if He would get me out, then I would go to church. But God doesn't necessarily make deals like that, and I was completely ignorant of anything. But I did happen to get out. This was December 24th, 1994. I was arrested, and my uncle bailed me out at the stroke of midnight, which happened to be my father's birthday. And I got out, and I never made it to church. I didn't change any of my ways. I tried some. I tried to cut back. I enrolled in a local community college, and dropped out of that probably on the last day. I'm the sort that was always on the brink of some sort of success and would drop the ball at the last minute. And long story short, I didn't see any hope for me in the Los Angeles area. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to live at home. And I thought, if I could just be a normal guy, a normal Joe, if I could just work a normal job and make a living, I should be happy. So my mother and stepfather had returned to take care of his mother in South Carolina, and I moved to South Carolina with two friends. I actually talked to friends who were not as bad off as I was. Into moving with me to South Carolina, I moved to South Carolina, and I continued using and drinking on a pretty much daily basis. And it wasn't long before I figured that if I'm going to do it, I should do it all the way. This wasn't really working. And I made some contacts with some friends back in California, and started trafficking drugs. And of course, it wasn't very long.
Chris, how old were you at this time, and how far away were you from your mother and her husband?
So I was 21 when I moved to South Carolina. I was 23. I actually moved back in with my mother. 1990. I moved in April or May of 96, and I moved back in with my mother, and one of my friends moved in with me to my mother's for a short time while we tried to get back on our feet and get a place around, I think, New Year's, Christmas of 97, right before 1998. And I got a trailer, and that's probably when I started selling again and trafficking. and I got a trailer, and we were probably living 10, 15 miles from my mother.
Okay.
I would go see my mother probably once a week, but I was living a lie. I would tell her I was working. I wasn't working. Um, and wasn't long before I was in some serious trouble. And I moved to South Carolina to quote unquote turn over a new leaf and stay out of trouble and get away from that bad crowd. But I was that bad crowd. So it wasn't long before I was in trouble again. It wasn't long before I was in serious trouble. And I left the state. I was on the run for about a year. I went back to California. I actually went to St. Louis for a little while, got a little trouble there, went to California, got a little more trouble, and was looking for a place to go and hang out for a minute. And I went back to South Carolina. And I had an APB out on me, and I had a bench warrant, and I went to jail. And then I went to another jail where my serious crime had happened, in Pickens, South Carolina. And then I was out on bond with my mother, living at my mom's house, and I was out on bond for several months, and I was going to roll call every month, and I had procured a good lawyer, put some good money into that.
Sorry to interrupt you. What is that? Explain what roll call is.
So when you're out on bond, you have to show up to court, say every month or so, and just they're just trying to keep tabs on you, make sure you're there. And my lawyer, after going several times, I think I got out of jail in October or November of 1999, and I went to roll call or to court several times, met with the lawyer, and I was still living a lie. I was living a lie saying that that I was going to beat my case and I was not going to go to jail or prison. But I was facing life plus 25, and I had a violent crime. I was 25 years old, and my mother was sick on that day that I went to roll call. My stepfather took me, and my lawyer said, "Today's the day." He said, "You need to plead guilty today." And I thought to myself, well, why would I plead guilty today? I'm free. The car's gassed up and I can go home now. And he said, you need to just sit and watch court today. And I watched a lot of people that would normally, quote unquote, go down the road, which means go to prison, be released, or, get lighter sentences than they normally would. And we ate lunch, the lawyer, my stepfather, myself, and he talked me into it. He said, "Yeah, today's your day." And I said, "All right, I'll do it." And the deal was, if I would plead to the lesser charge, he would drop the greater. So I would plead to it was an assault and battery with intent to kill, and I wouldn't have to plead to the greater charge. And there was no real deal other than that. There wasn't no agreement. And he actually said, if I can pass a drug test today, I could go home. And I had to hang my head in shame because I couldn't pass a drug test. So, long story short, I pled guilty. And that day changed my life because it was the first time that I had been honest with myself and anyone else in a long time. Part of the legal process, I know you're not a criminal defense attorney, but you probably know that when you plead guilty, you have to sort of give some details, and they want to make sure it's you and you did it. And so I had to give an account, and I had to apologize, and I was sorry, and placed myself at the mercy of the court. And I got 10-year sentence. suspended to 30 months, which is a very light sentence for that crime.
Mm.
I've never met anybody that didn't do 10 years. And on 10 years of that violent crime, you would do 85%, which means you do 8.5 years.
And you're 25 at this time.
I'm 25 at that time. And so I plead guilty. I spend the night or 2 or 3 in county jail. They come to pick me up and transport me, take me to prison. And I'm beginning to detox. This is the first time I've been sober in a very, very long time, probably 10 years.
Wow.
And I've probably been using every day for a long time, for pretty much every day for probably the 10 years or so. I begin to take account of my life, and I begin to think, this is horrible. This is not what I want to do. This is not all it's cracked up to be. This is not like some movie or some rap video. And it occurred to me that at the same time, all I wanted to do was get high. All I wanted to do was escape my reality. I didn't want to think about the trail of destruction I had left, how I had burned so many bridges, how I had ruined so many relationships and hurt so many people that loved me, and hurt anybody that come close to me. I was very, very bitter, and I just didn't want to face reality. So my advice was to just get high, just do whatever it is to numb myself and not face reality. But I at the moment, I didn't have a chance. I didn't have an opportunity to do that. And also occurred to me that if I did that while I was in prison, then I was as good as already back. So I had 25.5 months to go on that 30-month sentence. You do 85%.
What prison were you in?
So I was in Kirkland, South Carolina. So the name of the prison is Kirkland, I think, Kirkland R&E, receiving an evaluation in South Carolina, sort of.
Okay.
If you're in Georgia, it's called diagnostics, is where they receive and evaluate you. And while I'm there, in a 2-man cell with 4 other men, that makes 5 of us. You're talking, there's a bunk bed, and then there's some mats on the floor, and there's a toilet and a sink. And I was fortunate to have a bed, but it's not a good place. And everybody's upset because everybody just got sentenced, and nobody knows where they're going. And everybody's really coming to grips with what just happened, that they were just sentenced. And some people have been to prison and some haven't. I had been in and out of the system many times, but I had yet been to prison. And so long story short, I become suicidal because I thought to myself, I can't stop. All I've ever done is use, and there's no hope. I moved to South Carolina to do better. And here I am in prison in South Carolina, of all places. Not a good place for, a California boy. Somebody comes by and gives me some gospel tracts. Probably somebody from the Rock of Ages prison ministry comes by with it looks like a tool cart. It has an assortment of gospel tracts and different literature. And I remember he comes by, and the bars are literally like this thick, and the gap is this thick. And he speaks to the man in front of me, and I just sort of gather the fact, and I know nothing about the gospel. I know nothing about Jesus, literally nothing. But I gather the fact that he says he's a Christian and he's not trusting in his baptism. So that sort of blew my mind, and it sort of frustrated me because me and him were not getting along. Me and him wanted to kill each other. And And he said he's a Christian, and he knew he was forgiven. He knew he was saved, and he wasn't trusting in baptism. That's all I gathered. The other man gave me some gospel tracts, and I really didn't want them. I was just glad to talk to somebody. But he didn't have time to spend with all of us, and it's hard for all of us to talk in that crowded place. So he gave me those tracts, and I thought to myself, well, I don't need this. That's for weak people. The rest of these knuckleheads, the rest of these, people, they need it, but not me. But I very much needed it, because here I was at the end of my rope. I went back. I started to read those gospel tracts, and it's a funny thing. They give you a Bible when you get to prison. I never really had a Bible before. And I didn't know how to match up the scriptures, and I began to look at the scriptures. It talked about being born again and being saved. And the only thing I knew about that was I thought it was something comedians joked about, being born again, being saved. But God became real to me. He let me know that I didn't need to quit this or quit that. He let me know that I knew I was lost. I knew I was deserving of hell. And it became real to me. I realized that God sent his son to die for me. He loved me just like I was. And if I would put my trust in him and him alone, that he would save me. And really, it was just that simple. All I wanted was to go to sleep and not think about hell. All I wanted to do was be forgiven. And I thought, this is great news. I thought, this is so simple. It's almost too good to be true. And I thought, I'll do it later. And I put it off. And I don't know how long I put it off, probably just hours, because I got under Holy Ghost conviction. I thought, this is great, I'll do it later. And I had this distinct feeling that I was sort of just spitting in God's face. He had offered me his son, and this was an answer to prayer. And I knew it was so crystal clear how to be saved, how to go to heaven, how to be forgiven. And I was so prideful to reject it and love my sin. And there was no visions, there was no audible voice, but I really felt there was a gospel tract, and it talked about this boy named Johnny, and he was a procrastinator. And, he would get a homework assignment, I'll do it later. He would have some practice or sports or something, I'll clean his room, I'll do it later. Well, that was me. I'll do it later. And there I was, dealing with God and saying, I'll do it later.
But this is a couple of hours span we're talking about, not days or years, right?
It could have been minutes, but I think it was a
Okay.
few hours.
Okay.
I mean, it was pretty intense. It was late at night in a hot summer night in June in Columbia, South Carolina. And before long, I really felt as though God hung me out over the flames of hell. I realized that he didn't want me to go, but it was my choice. And I had this distinct feeling, and that I was literally praying for God to leave me alone and let me forget about hell. And I had this distinct feeling that if I was to go to sleep, I'd wake up tomorrow and I would go back to my thoughts of trying to work my way. And it was obvious that I could never work my way. I was a junkie. I was a quitter. I was a loser. There's just no chance. And I finally, quote unquote, waved the white flag of surrender. And I didn't understand what was going to happen. I didn't have any idea about a new birth. I just knew I could be forgiven. And I just asked the Lord to save me. I trusted him. He said he would. I asked him to keep his word. And just like that, there was a change. And the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. I slept the first time sober and I don't remember how long. And I had a desire to read my Bible like I never did. And I had a desire to be around Christians. So whenever somebody was talking about the Bible or Jesus and me being completely ignorant, I would just sort of wander over there and listen. And I remember maybe in the next day or couple days, there's another young man. They hardly ever let us out of our cell. They kept us segregated by age, and it was 18 to 25. I was one of the older, but the younger inmates, the younger men are the most wild ones. And there's this young man, he's about 18 years old, and they let us out in the common area. And he's more or less tore up about his girlfriend or his wife, Jody. And I remember saying to him, I said, man, you need to do what I did. You need Jesus. You need one of these tracts. And I was never going to tell anybody because I didn't want to have jailhouse religion. I figured I'd be strung out the next chance I got. I didn't never envision me being sober. I didn't know there could be victory. So I just got in my Bible and began to consume it and read it like crazy. And I didn't have anything but time. Eventually they sent me, quote unquote, down the road to a prison in Spartanburg, which was where my mother lived close by, about 10 or 15 minutes. And it happened to be what I guess they would classify a minimum in, was my classification. I couldn't work outside the prison, but I wasn't in a, as far as prisons go, it wasn't the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst. And there happened to be some good Bible believing Christians there. So there happened to be somebody from a local church that would come and preach to us. And there was a state service, which was very different. More, it's crazy the different types of things that go on in prison and the different types of brands of Christianity. And you got your claim it and name it, and here I am in prison. Well, if I could claim it and name it, might be out of here. But that didn't work. But there were some Bible believing Christians that came and they just preached the Bible. And here I am, a California boy in South Carolina, of all places. And I'd never heard anybody just open up the Bible and preach. I'd never heard anybody say amen. I had never heard it so plain, but I loved it. And even though at the same time I was being corrected, my toes were getting stepped on. I mean, my life was characterized by sin. And I realized that pretty much everything I was doing was wrong. And I began to expect I should probably change this. I should change that. And I was right. I probably need to change that.
So the amazing power of the Holy Spirit even convicts in prison to show you the truth, your need of Jesus, your need of salvation, but then it continues. Now you're on a growth pattern, a refining.
Yes. Well, I mean, as babes, right, we grow a lot in our infancy, and it was all new to me, and I'm just growing like crazy. I'm consuming it, and it's changing me from the inside out. And so where I was full of bitterness, and now I have love for my fellow men. I was just cruel. If I felt like somebody was happy, I felt like it was my job to steal their joy previously, and that completely changed. I had forgiveness in my heart.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
We would sing hymns, and I never heard a hymn. But I quickly learned that anybody can sing a hymn, especially if we all sing together. And I remember thinking, this is the most corniest thing I've ever heard, but I really like it. And it's feeding my soul and my spirit. And, I began to just make changes. Um,
Now, fast forward to how old were you when you got out, and where did you go from there?
so I was 27 years old when I got out. So, and I went back home to my mother's. I slept on her couch. My friend actually had been renting a room from her the entire time. And my stepfather, I was on house arrest. I had what they call community supervision, which is like parole, which means if I got in any sort of trouble in the next 2 years, I would go finish the rest of my 10-year sentence, which means I would do another 8 years.
Wow, wow. So, how old are you now? And I know for a fact you've continued to grow in your faith and your knowledge, wisdom, and changes. How old are you now? And tell me what you do now.
So I'm 50 years old, and I run the Gainesville Baptist Mission. I'm an associate pastor at Oakwood Baptist Church.
So saved 25 years now.
Saved 25 years by the grace of God. Never a hit, never a drop, never a line, never again, by the grace of God. He did for me what no program could do, what no one else could do. And there were some men that invested in my life when I during that time I was in prison. These men would come and preach to me, and I would parrot what they preached to me to my mom, because my mother was lost and I wanted to witness to her. And my mother was just full of despair, and her and her husband's their marriage wasn't the best, and they just full of trouble. And long story short, somebody came and preached a message on knowing that you know that you know, basically knowing that you're saved and knowing that you're going to heaven. And I parroted that message back to my mother, and I asked my mother, if you died today, are you 100% sure you'd go to heaven? And she said, I don't know. And in the meantime, one of the other ministries that were coming to preach to me, all tied together with the Living Letters prison ministry. Brother Ed Vanover would come preach on Sundays. Anyways, he slaughtered one of his cows and fed the entire yard, and had somebody come and preach a revival service at the prison I was at. So that I found out about that church. It was Grace Baptist Church in Landrum, South Carolina. And in the meantime, some of those people finally, I talked him into having his wife go visit my mom. And he was very apprehensive, right? I can't go visit can't have this guy tell me to go visit his mom and I meet them in prison. That probably wouldn't be good. But his wife and the ladies from the church, they went and visited my mom and befriended her and brought her to church. And she started coming to church faithfully. And I told her to ask the pastor about what I had asked her. And she asked him, and him and his wife led my wife to the Lord. And then the next Sunday, my mother comes in to visit me. She'd come visit me just about every Sunday or Saturday. And my mother's almost floating. She's an obvious new creature. She's always full of worry. You don't want to ask her how she's doing because it's not good. She's going to tell you. And my mother she learned about grace. And she's telling everybody that, from every prison guard, everybody, that she's giving out tracts, and she's telling them that she got saved and her husband, her son got saved, and it's all by grace. And she's got it nailed down. I get out in 2002. I stay with her. I go to church. My best friend and my stepfather, I invite them to church, and they say, I don't want to, just save it for someone else. I don't want to hear your jailhouse religion. You'll be strung out in a couple of weeks. You'll be back in jail or prison in a couple of weeks. You'll be shacked up. You just won't be here. So just save it. And I said, so you don't think I can do it? And they said, no, I don't think you can do it. And I said, well, here, how about we make a deal? I said, if I can go 90 days and I'm faithful and I'm not have any major blowups, why don't you come to church every service? They said, okay, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And lo and behold, I did that. And they went, and my friends and my stepfather, they didn't get saved then, but they started going to church. My friend Kevin, he got saved probably a year or two later. My stepfather probably got saved probably 6 years later. He was a very self-righteous, self-made man. And you just, probably saw a lot of hypocrisy, but he called me one day and we were very contentious. We didn't get along. And I prayed for him for years because I really wanted my mother and stepfather to get along and to have a good life. And finally, he called me one day and he called me broken down, saying I got saved. I went to Bible college. I met my wife at church. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a great son. So 18,
that's
almost
amazing.
17, and 13. I pastored for a few years. I've been at Oakwood Baptist Church I moved here to North Georgia in 2010.
And tell us where Oakwood Baptist is.
So Oakwood Baptist Church is actually in Flowery Branch. It's right there at the border on Martin Road, right off of 985, Oakwood Baptist Church in Flowery Branch, Georgia. And we have a program. We meet every week, but we also have a mission. And the mission is it's a recovery program. It's a life recovery program for men. And it used to be a shelter, an overnight shelter, but we really sought to pastor them in a little bit more and disciple them. And we really believe that Jesus is the answer. We believe in structure. We believe in the scripture. So when men enter our program, they're not allowed to leave for the first 30 days without supervision. They go to church every time the doors are open, Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday evening, Thursday evening. We have our recovery meetings there. They have devotions every morning from 6:15 to 6:45. Lights come on, beds are made by 6, and devotions. And they eat, and they help out our thrift store, and they work our curriculum. And it's a really discipleship curriculum. And to work that curriculum, they're journaling, they're reading, they're learning how to dissect and define the scriptures. They're learning how to give praise and give thanks, and just how to walk with God. And we have different men come and preach chapel every night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Friday night. They have Saturday night off. And it takes about 6 to 9 months to finish the curriculum. It takes 11 full months for them to graduate our program. What they have to do, once they phase up after 30 days, they pass a drug, alcohol, and even nicotine test. We find them work. Most of our men are working entry-level jobs. They make about $17, $18 an hour. They pay 2/3 of their net income and fees, and they have to abide by the rules and structure. The further they go in and the further they get along in the program, the more liberties they get, the longer passes and stuff like that.
But this is a year-long program.
It is a very intensive Christian environment, and it's a big commitment. It takes usually a broken man or a man that's sick and tired of being sick and tired to come into our program and submit to this sort of structure and this sort of intensive Christianity, because he's going to recite over 100 verses of scripture, and we recite Psalm 1 every day.
Wow. Wow.
And even if you're saved, unless you really want to live for the Lord and grow, it's very hard to be there, because we don't allow complaining. Now we can't stop it all, 100%. But if someone has a negative attitude, we try to correct them. because we believe that they ought to be grateful, and they signed up for it, and they signed up and they asked for it. And so what we're offering them is love, um, food, clothing, and shelter, a safe, secure place, but structure,
Hmm.
work, and we want to teach them some biblical principles on how to maneuver in life. Number one, I think men just need to finish what they start, and they need to learn how to do things they don't like to do. A lot of us go to work and do things that we don't like to do, but they have to be done so we can provide. Um,
It's
and they're
that's
not often accustomed to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. What is the name of the mission, and where is it located?
It is Gainesville Baptist Mission, and it is on Main Street, just south of the square in Gainesville, 669 Main Street Southwest. It's been in existence since the 90s, but we've been transitioned to this program, I think, in 2021. I think we had 9 graduates last year. I have a graduate house. So if men
That's
graduate our
fantastic.
program, they're allowed to purchase it. What happens is they pay 2/3 of their net income in fees. When they graduate, they get half of their fees back. So in 11 months' time, they should have about $8,000 saved.
Wow, wow.
And then they're allowed to purchase a car. If they enter our graduate program, they have to keep $2,000 in emergency savings. But then they can purchase a car, and if they choose to stay and they get more liberties once they graduate, they can come and go as they please. There's still a curfew. They're still required to go attend church and serve. And I have 2 men that are in the graduate program. Actually, I have 3 men, or actually more. But one of the men is our steward. He helps run the thrift store, and he does transport. And he's an usher. I have 2 other men, Jeff and Randy, are at our graduate house. Jeff is an usher, and Stanley is our night steward, and he's an usher. And they're all faithful to church, and
It's
they've grown, and God has
it's
begun to mend bridges in their lives, and
it's a it's a
they're trophies of grace.
it's a wonderful, wonderful ministry. It's a wonderful story. Um, Let me ask you this: if someone out there has a family member, or knows someone that they think may need this program, and it sounds like these folks have, like you at the age of 25, hit bottom. How can they reach you? How can they reach out to you and see if this might be something that is, would be helpful?
So they can just call me. The best way is to call me, text me, um, on my cell, 678-570-4976. And that's the Gainesville Baptist Mission. You can look us up under Oakwood Baptist Church in Prairie
Okay.
Branch, or Gainesville Baptist Mission.
So they
You
can
just call
find a
me, six
page
seven eight
there.
570-4976. You call me and text me, and then
And
we'll talk about whether or not they would be a good fit, whether they're ready to come submit to this, and whether I have an opening. Um, we have a small waiting list. And usually what happens is, because we're looking for people that want to help we take men right off the streets, but we really would love to help some people of the house of faith that would, they for whatever reason, they're not functioning to their and meeting their obligations as adult men, and maybe they need an in-house program like ours. And what I tell them is this: if you're coming to us, you probably don't have many choices. Your back's up against the wall.
right, right.
But what I'm offering you is love and support. I'm going to give you the tools to walk with God. We want to disciple you, but also you're going to have a chance of stable employment, because you got to be stably employed to be stable in life. And you're going to learn how to function in society and structure. And when you graduate and you have, say, $8,000, now you have choices. And I hope that you'll choose then to live for God and continue to be faithful.
Amen.
But you can't really know until you're there, because but the first thing is to get you in a safe, secure environment.
Right.
We're gonna shoulder the whole burden for you. But after a while, when you start working, you're starting to pull a little bit of your own weight, and you're starting to be responsible, and you're learning how to keep a job, and you're learning how to not run from confrontation, or how to resolve problem resolution with your fellow men, because we're a small place, 14 men in the program. If every bed is full, but you can't have 14 men without problems, different personalities, different backgrounds. But if we're all walking together and pulling in the same direction of the Lord, we can get along.
That's great. That's
And
great.
then you have a new chance, and you have choices. And there's handfuls of men that are out there holding jobs. I have a young man, I think he was 34 years old when he came to us. He really never functioned outside of crime, and never stayed out. He was always in and out of jail or prison. And he knew if he was to continue with the crowd that he was with, he was going to end up back in prison. And he came and he submitted himself, and he finished the program. And when he walked out of there, he walked out with over $10,000, almost $11,000, a car and a job. I saw him the other day. He's not doing exactly as I would love him to do, but he's stayed out of trouble. He's holding the same job he did when he left 2 years ago. He's looking at buying a home.
Wow. Wow. That's
So,
fantastic.
the principles work, right?
Right.
If we do what God tells us to do, most of us that live a life of addiction and recovery, we're just in and out of chaos, and in and out of stepping on the landmines, and it's a hard life.
Yeah.
And life is a lot easier when we don't have to worry about going to jail or passing a drug test.
Yeah.
And then if we're walking with God, I think we have the opportunity for God to bless us.
Well, Chris, as we close, I do want you to give that phone number one more time. I think I interrupted you the last time you were trying to give it real quick, and we'll close.
Well, I apologize for being so wordy and taking all your time, but
it's been a pleasure having you here. It's an amazing story, and it's wonderful work that you're doing now.
Well, thank you. You can reach us again, 678-570-4976. If you know of a man that needs some help, we'd love to help him if he'll let us help him. That's what we aim to do through Jesus, the scriptures, and structure. Thank you, Brother Darrell. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris. God bless you.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Crashes, Claims, and Clarity with attorney Darrell Burrow, founder of Burrow & Associates and a trusted advocate for over 30 years. If today's episode helped bring clarity or hope after an accident, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. To connect with Darrell or learn more, visit legalatlanta.com. Join us next week for another honest, faith-centered conversation about recovery, rights, and moving forward after injury.